Go ahead. Oh,
Let's have it. Hey, everybody. My name is Antowan Hallman Sr. I'm here with my good friend Raul Labreche, and this is a frame of reference coming together. And of course, Raul Labreche, he actually created the frame of reference podcast years ago, where they're talking about various issues. It started out with the arts, but then it came to social issues, and now we have he invited me into this platform to talk about things of a Black nature, or just how do we bring the races together? How do we create unity? How do we bring understanding? So thus the name of the podcast, Frame of Reference, coming together. How you doing, brother?
Oh man, it's been a week. I can never say anything though that's even close to, the stuff you deal with every day with I don't know, guys, if you've listened to this podcast before, you know that my brother Antowan really deals with some serious pain issues, and his character yet remains devoted in service to not only the communities around him, but to his wife and family. And he is the real deal when you want to talk about, someone that is trying to walk the walk and talk the talk. So I am just fine. It's the cold has been a little bit difficult, but I'm much more towards cold than I am heat. And I'm excited about our talk today. Every day we have a talk, every time we get together and just kind of mull things over. My role in this, folks, is to just ask questions that I have, and I hope they're the same questions about, things that you have. And I really want to understand more about the Black experience in America. Because we seem to have two kind of diametrically opposed groups of folks in the U.S. right now. There are those that are acknowledging that there's a problem with systematic racism, that there are issues that have not been resolved since the early formation years of this country. And then there are those that absolutely deny and, honestly get angry about the suggestion that does exist. And then that carries people into even more anger. And I guess the third group of people are those that are actively hating on Black people of color in general. And if that was not the case, somebody please tell me why there's still white supremacist movements where people are so convinced that the white way of living is under threat, endangered, that they, rekindle hate on every front imaginable. And, it is, I don't understand it, folks, because this country is changing. It changed when the Germans came in mass. It changed when the Irish came in mass. It changed when the Italians came in mass. And unfortunately, the African Americans, our Black people in our country, it didn't change. It got worse for them when they came. And now when we're finally trying to recognize that, we have the mess we have today. And I want my topic today, and the thing that spurred me to realize that there is this dichotomy in ways that I don't even think about. And I was early in the week, I was just on uppers over our quarterback here in Wisconsin, the Green Bay Packers. There's a young gentleman that is playing for our team right now that took over for a legend, Aaron Rodgers. And this guy is just such an inspiration to me because he's not only a great quarterback and a young quarterback. What is he, like 25 years old? I think I'm not a big football fan, but
I want to say
Jordan isn't he?
About that age, 24, 25, yeah.
Okay. And he's not only, but now he's doing that, but we were reading during this big snowfall we had not too long ago. He was like helping people pushing their cars out of snowbanks. He works for he did some significant work with the Salvation Army over the Christmas holiday break where he was, signing autographs. People would give donations to Salvation Army. He was signing an autograph for them. So, I don't know if you've tried to get signatures, but I'm a Star Trek guy. William Shatner charges like $400 for an autograph for him. And it just goes to him, so just, the quality of the character of the man was so wonderful and is so wonderful. And it struck me that, is there a bridge there? Can Black athletes and the quality of human being that there are, does that cause white people, or give them reason to just kind of wake up and say, hey, these guys are heroes. What am I doing thinking that black people are any different? They're heroes. They're wonderful people. I don't need to see them as black or white. I just have to see them as human beings that are great human beings. And Antoine, I sent that out to Antoine. I said, am I simplifying things? Of course I am. I'm that kind of guy. But Antoine said, it is interesting. America loves its black athletes, the Michael Jordans of the world, and the Jordan loves. But we then will turn around and disdain a black man at Walmart. We will look at him and see, what's he doing in this, whatever, the thoughts, or just be like, oh, geez, I better be careful, or whatever, wonder what he's carrying in his pockets. The thoughts that go through people's mind because they have disdain. They all of a sudden, the color becomes an important thing for some reason, or, a place of judgment, and it's ripping us apart. That's that inability to just say, hey, we go up and ask questions. Hey man, how's it going? How are you doing today? I don't know. What is that? I mean,
well, we got to get to a place where we are in a space of knowledge over narratives. Of course, like when we take like we'll use the Jordan Love example. Yes, he is a great young man, and definitely celebrate his success. And he loves his family, and he's obviously he loves the community. So that is a great thing. Of course, when we were talking maybe an earlier podcast, we were talking about how we find commonality. When you think of like say a black entertainer, black athlete, and of course, like say when we're talking about how the contrast in treatment or the disdain versus the entertainer versus the common electrician or whatever, and it's just a matter of knowledge over narratives, because people say, okay, the commonality is with him. Hey, I love Packers, and this young man plays for my team, and he is being successful for my team. So we like him, we love him. But also, when we talk about, like, say, the black entertainer, the black athlete, and like, say, the person that goes by narrative versus actually having the actual knowledge, they'll have the narrative of, well, look at, why can't all black people be like him? He worked hard to get to where he is, and da 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 da. But the thing is, I want you to take a picture of this and just think, for every black successful athlete you see, there's going to be maybe a few 100,000 that didn't make it. They followed in the same footsteps. They worked out the 2-3 times a day. They did everything that was supposed to, in what the world says, to become a successful athlete or a successful entertainer. They did what was right along those lines. And so when we see someone that has actually made it, you say, okay, why can't they all be like him? And it's like, we all are. We're just working hard in our own different professions, or we're doing the best.
We're breaking up here. We're breaking up.
Or it's just
Why, a bunch of that's breaking up, my friend.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, just simply put, just the narrative is not all of us work as hard as that person that you see on the daily basis on TV or in the entertainment or sports realm, which is just kind of false. For everyone that you see that has made it in this success, for every successful Jordan Love, there's a couple of 100,000 young kids that didn't make it but followed the same footsteps. They desired the college scholarship. They come from a place of poverty. They come from a single family home. They come from all these different things, and they did everything, but they didn't get that scout didn't come to their neighborhood or their school, or it's just, again, for everyone that made it, there's a few 100,000 that didn't. And it's not to say that we all don't work hard, because we do. And that's just white or black. It's just, again, that narrative of, well, why don't they all try as hard as he did and we'll be all right? And that's just not the case.
Well,
And of course, we see, yeah, go
well,
ahead.
doesn't that go to, the whole issue too with affirmative action programs and, the equal right, voting acts, the things that are
Well,
hopefully leveling the field a little bit more. And now there's all of this, well, I don't get any breaks like that. Why should they get breaks just because they're black or whatever,
Well, again, and this is what we have to have the knowledge over the narrative. Of course, even going back to what was being said in Florida, how, the slaves, they actually gained skills. And actually, that's trying to put humility on slavery. That's creating a whole different narrative about the aspect of slavery and what it was and what it really did and how it affects us to this day. And that's where, and it's like now it's like is again this consistent whitewashing of history, or this pacifying of history, or just creating this thing about history as if it didn't. It did. It's almost, they want to make it so where it doesn't appear to have an effect on things today. Because, like I said, those very things that were like these things were acknowledged at one point, but now there's an all-out attack against them. Of course, like you got some of the most powerful people in the world now saying you will die with DEI. You will die with DEI. If like they blamed a plane crash on diversity, equity, and inclusion. You got billionaires, the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, saying you'll die with DEI. And again, it's all about, just again, this minority rule complex. People think that they're this replacement theory complex, and it's just not the case. It's just the world is changing. The world is evolving. Yes, there's going to be more minorities. There's going to be more non-white people. There's actually probably more non-white people, or just as much right now. I don't know all the exact stats, but yes, this is instead of embracing this change and understanding how can we get better understanding and how we can come to a place of growth and love and understanding, people are bringing up these things of hate. Because again, all these tactics like taking away voting rights and affirmative action and women's right to choose, taking away all these rights. Now we're at the next stage of it, where the threats of violence, just like in the 30s, 40s, 50s, now here come the threats of violence again. And this is a perpetual cycle that we're in right now. Dr. King, he made a great quote, and I want to get it right, but forgive me for the paraphrasing. But he says, "It's not what my enemy says to me, but it's about what my supporters don't say." And so we are still in a space where democracy is under attack, voting rights, common sense law, and even various amendments of the Constitution are under attack. And people are aware of it, but they're not saying anything. So me as a black man, me calling it out, crying out about it. How many times have I tell you the country is tired of hearing a black man cry, right? Mm-hmm. So, but when we cry about it, or when we talk about it, what they're saying? Oh, you're exaggerating this. Well, you're exaggerating.
I had a friend of mine
I
had a friend this morning that we were having breakfast together, and he said that, some slaves were actually treated, it wasn't so bad. They were treated really well by their masters. And, they said that it wasn't too bad. And I said, wait, whoa. And I almost could not believe, because this is a wonderful guy. Okay. This is a very loving, caring, guy that's been through a whole bunch of just very, very difficult stuff in his life, knows great disappointment, knows what it is to be, just economically threatened, and, has given of his heart, soul, blah, blah, blah. Good person. Right. But he has been told a bunch of lies as a white person, that it's some black people actually thought it was not a bad thing to be a slave. And I said, wait a minute. There is no way, any way, shape, or form, that a black person ever thought that being a slave was not so bad. If anything, there might have been, hey, today was a good day. I didn't get beaten today. Thankfully I did not get beaten today, but there was the threat that the day isn't over yet and I still could do something that would get me beaten. Not to mention that, even DeSantis's stuff about, some black people were taught, useful skills that, they could take and actually, benefit themselves and benefit blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah, just step back from that a second too. You didn't have a right to, choose whether or not you wanted to be a blacksmith or not. You were told by your master, you're going to be a blacksmith. And you know what? You better be a really good blacksmith because I need a good blacksmith, not somebody that's going to do a crappy job on things. And on top of it, you didn't have any choice. You weren't, there saying, well, I really would like to, and be, okay, well, yeah, that sounds like a good thing too. Why don't you do that? And worse yet, if you tried to do something like just read, well, I would like to be able to learn to read too, because, I need to read manuals and how to do and whatever, or I just want to be able to read my Bible. No. You can't, we can't have black people reading. That's just not acceptable. So explain that to me. Explain to me, the narrative that says it wasn't that bad. Okay. If it wasn't so bad, then why were black people at all treated like furniture? Why were they treated like, we could never get away from the fact that I own that 2/3 person. It's like, really? How can you even get to a place, white folks out there, how can your friends get there? Try to understand, don't try to just, yell at them, but just say, that's really interesting that you think that. Why do you think that? Why do you think that? Well, wait a minute. But why do you think that any black person would think that that was a good thing, that that was okay? They were treated really well. So, this is just fine. Do you think any one of them, do you believe that any one of them would, if given the chance to not be a slave, would have not gone like that to say, yeah, I'll not be a slave. I'd like to determine what I do with my life and when I do it and how I do it. I'd like that freedom thing you guys talk about, but only have for yourselves, right? Why?
Yeah, and of course, even going back to that, that's a great point there, brother. And it's like, of course, people, when you go like even back to the days of slavery, and you had the house Negro and the field Negro. Of course, the house Negro had some luxuries, excuse me, that the field Negro didn't. But at what cost did that house Negro get those benefits? Of course, he had to sell out the field Negro. If there was any kind of plans or plots to escape, he would go tell master. Or if and even at the cost of relationship, of course, those divides were just systematically changed, where yes, of course, you'll see the house Negro get treated better than the field Negro, and then of course the field Negro came to despise the house Negro, and then the house Negro may have developed a complex on us where, hey, here I'm better than you, and then of course, and that very thing has carried on till today as well. That very thing, and that's where it's like, I get envious of I don't want to say envious, but I admire how other races are able to stick together except black people, and it's I'm like, wow, stick together. Why can't we be one voice? But again, this thing that has been created over centuries put us at odds with each other. And I'll tell you a story. Where I used to live. Of course, we do a lot of community outreach, right? We do a lot of things in the community. I was confronted by this person just randomly. I love this person, and then just basically attacked me. My wife was going to call the police. He verbally attacked and was just talking all these different kinds of things. And it's like, he was like, and I'm like, hey man, what have I ever done to you? I've been nothing but nice to you. And then, of course, then we going back and forth. I'm like, I'm just stunned at what is happening in my face at this point. And then, of course, the person goes, oh, well, it's good that you're nice to the community. He's like, it's nice that you're good to the community, but I need you to be loyal to me. And I'm like, I know the Lord, my exact words was, I know the Lord didn't bring me from under one situation to come under another. And then the person dangles a $12,000 check stub in my face, said, if you submit to me, some of this could be yours. And that's when, and so again, it's so many little bitty, itty bitty pieces.
We dropped out again.
Created within that creates that crab in a barrel complex, or you know what I mean. And so it goes on and on. So there's a lot of things that we have to pray down and fight against. And of course, when the Bible tells us, for as much is up to you, live peaceably with all men, right? That means live for much is up to you. That means, have you done everything you can to get a better understanding? Have you done everything you can to just really put yourself in that person's shoes? Have you done everything you can to relate to that person? For as much as up to you, live peaceably with all men. And the answer to that, I would probably say, is no. Because again, people may identify, people may even sympathize. But when it comes to actually, some work involved, people will get scared, because again, what we're seeing is all out. We're seeing history repeat itself because of now, like that Dr. King statement I just made is not what my enemies say, but it's about the silence of the people that are supposed to be with me. Right. And it's like people are being threatened into not talking. People, and this is where we are. People are in fear of losing family members. People are in fear of losing relationships with friends and family. And so on and so forth, and again, it's like we cry about this all the time. I think I told you the story in one of our earlier podcasts, is where I had a white friend, and then, of course, just so happened we're downtown, back and forth. We're in the record stores and all this and that. And then one of his friends come up, and there's, of course, there's just a light hello and all that. And then, of course, my white friend goes, hey, what's going on with that? And I'm like, hey, man, I had a bad experience with that person. And he chose not to believe that. Right. And and so that's where we are.
Well, I have had my own thoughts of, this podcast takes off and the wrong white people start listening and start feeling threatened about, what we talk about and what I say. Because I'm not just speaking, words out of the southern end of my body. I'm trying to speak truly from my heart. And they are things I truly believe. And then I think, but if these folks show up at my doorstep and threaten my family, because they're, these are not reasonable people for the most part, right? These are not folks that are acting and willing to listen to another side of an equation. They are folks that are just, bent on hate. And I think to myself, am I prepared for that? How do I prepare for that? How do I prepare my family for that? I don't think my daughter would have a problem, because the nature of the things that she's studying with, multicultural racism. And she actually, as a PhD student, is talking about critical race theory and knows exactly how stupid it is that we get all bent out of shape about critical race theory being taught in elementary school. Because let me tell you, you think that high school and whatnot is boring now? It would really bore people if you tried to teach them about critical race theory, because it's really difficult to get your head around. It takes a lot of thinking.
I have the book, and I'm still like, I have the book, and I've been trying to get through it forever, but it's a lot to digest. Yeah, and so yes, you would not
really,
and it's like,
yeah. It's
and of course I had to have a friend of mine's, Percy Brown. He basically had to simplify the book for me. It's a study of systems,
right?
And that's where it's like, oh, now I can kind of wrap my head around it. It's a study of systems,
right?
And yes, and these systems do call out, the study of these systems do expose the systemic and systematic racism that is in this country. And but like you were just saying, though, like when this podcast takes off and people start to hate on you for whatever reason, because you're saying something that they don't want to hear. But you got to understand, people hate truth. And people's truth is based on how they feel. And when you are speaking truths like this, the enemy, our adversary, the devil, hates it. Of course, and what we teach in our ministry, we have to understand that this is spiritual. The Bible clearly tells us the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. That's 2 Corinthians 10 around verse 3 through 5. But then, Ephesians 6 around verse 10 or so, it says we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, against rulers of the darkness of this age, and against spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places. That means that this is a spiritual thing. Hate is a spirit, the spirit of division. It's a spirit. And when we can really get past, that's when we can actually really start to see, the kingdom of God start to really manifest itself on earth as it is in heaven. Right. Love people. Right. And that's where because again, how many times have I told you I blame the church on a lot of instances? Yeah. This thing starts in the church. Yeah. Where, you got, these evangelical churches, they now have this Christian masculinity thing, this thing going where now it's okay for a church to buy guns and say we're waiting on some type of civil war. No, right. That's not right. That's a spiritual, that's a demonic spirit. Because if we're actually talking about the love of Christ, he loved people, he forgave people, and he gave his life for people. He gave to people. Right. He loved, forgave, and gave. That's the very culture of Christ.
He would be the chairman of the DEI committees throughout the country. He would be. That would be. Look at Christ's words. Look at the stuff in red, guys. That is like straight out of DEI philosophy and DEI, goals and objectives. Because he didn't sit there and say, "Oh, here's this woman that's sitting at the well." And, she's had like 7 husbands or whatever. He already knew that before he sat down next to her. He knew that before he sat down with her. And yet he was there to tell her about living water. He was there to tell her about his role in saving her and saving anyone like her. He had prostitutes that were part of his ministry that were following him. He had tax collectors who, at that point in time, tax collectors aren't particularly loved right now, but they were really hated back then. So and then the common people were fishermen. He was all about diversity and inclusion and equity. There was no, the people that he had issues with were the people that were Pharisees and Sadducees that were like, oh, no, we can't have part of that they don't have the learning that I have and the deeper understanding of the word that I have. They didn't speak with their kind of British accent, obviously, but you get my point, right? So yes. What's the deal? So you think about in the last days that if it were possible, even the elect would be deceived. And I think about, I don't know if I want to be or can't, when I go to think of, am I the elect? Am I the elect that's talking about? Because if I am the elect, praise God. But if I'm also the elect, oh Lord, help me not be deceived. Help me not be what Dr. King even talked about too, the greatest obstacle that I believe he talks about, like in the last sermon he had before the shooting in Memphis, that the thing that he was most concerned about was white moderate America. Just to what you're saying, that they are the people that were the friends that were marching along with them, but when push came to shove, would they have the fortitude, the commitment, the passionate commitment overall to this not being right, to stand up and potentially lose it all, potentially die. And to think of it as being anything other than standing on the word of Christ and standing on, if I'm going to call myself a Christian, then I have to be able to lay down my life for another. And if I don't get it.
Yeah, and again, it's like and it ain't nothing but the love of God, the love of Jesus that allows, just speaking for myself, as a black man in this country, to get through what we're getting through. Of course, because I've made the decision. Okay, Lord, I'm going to obey your word. And of course, when we talk about, God's word, a lot of times people, yes, you can get all theological and deep with it, but Jesus taught at a 3rd, 4th grade level. So his words are pretty plain. It's just a matter, do you want to do it? Like when he says, like in his first Sermon on the Mount, when he says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are the peacemakers. Remember that scripture I just said a few minutes ago is Romans 12 around verse 10 or 11 or something like that. For as much as up to you, live peaceably with all men. So have you done everything you can to live peaceably with all men? Blessed are the peacemakers, so they shall be called sons of God. Because Jesus himself said he is peace. He is the Prince of Peace. And so and it's like if the church is creating discord, what do you think is going to happen in the world? Because when he said even God's elect will be deceived, he was talking about everyone who, even the people that accept him as their Lord and Savior, will be deceived. And we see that now. Because, when we're talking about, Christian nationalism, no, that's white nationalism. You can mask it into evangelical. You can mask it however you want. It comes down to simply hate. You're not a peacemaker. You're going against the very word of God that you're saying that you're preaching and teaching. You're going against it. And that's where Jesus that's who he cussed out the most. He was like, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees and hypocrites, right? And that's who he cussed out the most. So and that's where we are right now.
Can I ask a question? Because you're making me think of something again. I keep thinking of and not asking you. When I see black men and the video recordings of black men at January 6th, they're on the Capitol and they're fighting amongst all of these people that are, trying to tear down, the whole election process, trying to undermine the fair and equitable and elected, transition of power. Are those black men and women, and I don't know that there were a lot. I mean, you see, interspersed throughout the crowd. Are they today's equivalent of a house Negro?
No, they choose to believe what they choose to believe. And again, it's like, that's where where we feel like, this is how I see it, it's like a lot of poor or even middle class Americans are simply being deceived by lies. And of course, those few remnants of black people that you see sprinkled in that crowd, they chose to believe that lie. And of course, the field and house Negro comment, that's just the one who is in a position, but he don't want the field Negro to come into position. Right. That's and so he'll defame, blaspheme, whatever you want to call it. And that's just where it is. And of course, there's that disdain because, a lot of people just hate the favor that's going to be on your life, point blank. You're going to have haters.
How can they, though, not realize the movement, the folks that they're surrounded with are, I'm surprised they're not getting punched, that there's not a recognition that I'm aligning myself with all of the things that my people are fighting against. And maybe it's what you're talking about, that black people can't seem to be united in an effort, that there isn't that cohesion, pervasive cohesion. Is that I'm just trying to get my head around, like, it doesn't seem possible to me. It's like, it just doesn't make any sense.
It's again, just from my eyeball and from my perspective, it's all spiritual, and again, it's like this look at me spirit, look at what I'm doing, look at me, look at what I'm doing. And then it's like, if you see someone else doing something similar, you're going to shoot it down or defame it, or, you're just going to try to crush it because you want to be the only black voice in the room, or you want to be the only voice that speaks for this people in the room. And you see that a lot. And that's just not just in black communities, but in white ones as well. Yeah. In every community, you're going to have playmakers and you're going to have player haters,
Right.
and if you see someone making a play, and the thing is, it's like, and then you see the humbleness and the humility part of it, it's like, a lot of people hate that. And again, it's spiritual, because it ain't you that they're hating. They hate the spirit that's within you. And that's where, like, we preach and teach this Bible plainly and just saying, hey, understand it. This thing is spiritual. The Bible says, blessed those who persecute you. Blessed are those who are persecuted and, for righteousness' sake. And that means if all this opposition comes up, that means I must be doing something right. I take it as that. But one pastor said this. He was like, when people start coming against you, the first person you need to look at is yourself. You say, okay, what did I do to bring this on? And then not only do you just pray about it, but you pray and then you wait to get an answer from God. You wait on the Holy Spirit to give you an answer. And then if that reveals something wrong in you, you go and correct it. It's like it says, agree with your adversary quickly, lest, he turn you over to the judge and you get thrown in jail and you'll be there till you pay every last penny. So it's like if it's always a self-examination piece to everything. And so, but when things come up against you, when it's given to you that, hey, all you're doing is what I told you to do, because when we are walking in obedience to God, our obedience to God is going to offend other people. Point blank, because a lot of people know what they're supposed to be doing and just won't do it. Yeah. And so when they see you doing what they know they're supposed to be doing, they're going to hate that. And so, and again, that goes, that's just transcendent against people as a nature, as a culture, as the world we live in. And so, but when we're talking about this narrative of, the white, the black in America experience, it's like you can do everything that's right, again, but you're going to be judged based on how you dress. You're going to be judged based on, how you talk. There's a lot of good young Christian men, like when you go to a place like Chicago, right? Our home church, or our pastor, our covering, Pastor John F. Hanna at New Life Covenant Church Southeast. When we go down there, you'll see young men. Yes, they got the pants sagging, they got the braids, they got the holy jeans, but they are young, devout men and women of God. But yet they'll be judged in the world by other Christians based on how they appear. And then, of course, like I think I told you about how, like, the doctor here in Green Bay, he rolls up, he looked like the common person. But if you just looked at him on the outside, you would not know he was a doctor. Yeah. And that's where we are. Again, it's like we need to get to loving people versus judging people.
Mm-hmm. Right. And judging by what's the old thing, don't judge a book by its cover, right?
Right.
And you end up. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. And just again, like going back to the original part of our conversation, like when you see a black athlete, for every one successful black athlete that you see on the national stage, there's a few 100,000 of them that did not make it. They followed the same footsteps. They did everything they were told. They trained as they were told and did everything they were told. It just didn't happen for them for whatever reason, injury, luck of the draw, it just didn't happen. And then that narrative again comes up as to where, oh, well, if they worked hard as he worked, they all will be well off. And it's like a lot of people are working very hard with what they were born into. Yeah. Whatever they were born, it's a lot of good-hearted people that want to get out of where they are. They're just hoping for an opportunity. They hoping that the bus route will start to run through their community, more often. They are hoping, yes, if our, like, again, going back to what we were talking about, months ago, there's a lot of people that would love to get off welfare because they can make more money off welfare if they had help with childcare. And then, of course, it's like you have to sacrifice one or the other. The man can't be in the house. Either you take this welfare and stay at home, or you take your chances on your own with, 2-3 children. You go get a job, at $15, $16 an hour, and good luck with insurance,
Right. Good luck with, trying to watch your kids and keep them out of mischief, and good luck with, even I don't know, if people would just, as you say, try to understand, try to ask questions, try to really, really get a handle on it. I mean, I keep thinking of like stories that I hear of there's a young black man up in Baraboo, small town, 4,000, 8,000 people in West Baraboo and, Baraboo combined. He got to the point where whenever he was waiting for a stoplight, he would step back from the corner because he got tired of being spit on by white guys driving by in cars or taking, corners. And I thought, are you kidding me? And, he said, no, you get spit at and spit on a couple of times, that's enough to make you realize, hey, I better just step away from the corner here, wait for the light from there. Show me anywhere where that is something that any white person anywhere in the United States has to worry about. I mean, I would like to know if there is somebody, and I would like to know how they feel about that. And if this can happen in small town America, where else is it happening? I don't know. It's
And,
just,
and again, it's like to the uncompromising ear, that would sound as an exaggeration. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
If you
that
did not
didn't really happen.
know, it'll sound as an exaggeration.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we got to get to the knowledge over narratives piece. Of course, all these different narratives are trying to be established and created in this country, but we have to. And the thing is, people that are fighting for rights, people that know, as we speak up on these topics and subjects, we have to stay prayed up and like, Lord, don't help us to not to grow weary in well doing, because we can yell at the top of our voice and nothing is being done. And I mean, and the thing is there's no change. And the thing is, and it's like, you can't blame and I don't blame the president, because and it's like, and this is where a lot of narratives happen also, because people are constantly blaming the president and whoever else. And that's where we say knowledge over narratives. People need to learn the actual just basics of politics, the legislative system, the judicial system, and the executive branch of the government and how they work. Because again, it's easy to point the finger and say, okay, you're not doing this, that, and the other, but not understanding that the votes are needed in both of these houses to actually get to a desk to be signed. And so when something's being done or not being done, automatically we just say, okay, and this is like white people as well as black people. Well, such and such ain't doing this, such and such ain't doing that, because you got this constant bickering. But you got a small fraction of people within government that are basically acting and thinking the way that we're describing today. Their hearts are full of hate. They have this replacement theory thing in their hearts, and so they're fighting all these they're fighting justice and equality on every angle, and it's like, when you hear about, like, say, okay, abortion is a big issue, right? And then of course you hear all these states like Ohio, Kansas, Florida, they are fighting. They got the right. They got the bill, right, for their right to get an abortion, right, on their elections tickets or whatever, right? They got these things, but it's like, when will you stop electing the officials that are going to vote and try to circumvent the very thing that the right that you're trying to fight for, but yet you'll turn around and vote for the very person that's going to circumvent the thing that you're fighting for. Right. And so that's just, again, where unlearned people, poor white people, poor black people, we shoot ourselves in the foot. We vote against our own best interests because we've been manipulated. We've been lied upon. Of course, like that book that we shared last week, The Kingdom, Power, and the Glory. And that gentleman, I think it was like Tom Albertson, but whatever. And he was just talking about those things, how it just, these very things, how even evangelicals are being misled. They're taking a issue like abortion. Because remember, way back when, even in the South, they were a lot of pastors were for abortion. Mm-hmm. It became political. It became political in the 60s, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and so on and so forth. It became a political issue. And then, of course, when this political issue a lot of people in the church adapted this political issue, and then it became a good versus evil issue. And then, so even if you now we're in a space where, okay, abortion is evil, and anyone that stands for it is evil. But just think about this: everything that the other group stands for is evil as well. Equality, that's evil. Voting rights, that's evil. And this is where, again, I'm like, Lord, help me love your church, because these jokers are acting up.
Yeah. We better wrap this podcast up, because my blood pressure is through the roof right now. No, folks, just
Did I do that?
no, this whole thing, because I've had this conversation. I talked with a man on my other podcast, his frame of reference, profiles and leadership. Talked with a young man who lives in Kiev, Ukraine right now. And, I can't imagine what those people are going through right now. We've never had that kind of threat to our nation on our soil like they have had, and the number of people that have been lost in that war, the destruction that's happened. But he and I were talking about that, where do things go wrong? And he said, I think it goes back to asking why. That if we stop being curious about, why things are happening, why do people believe the things that they do? Why? And I'm encouraging people that are listening to this, just look at these situations, even if you're thinking about the guy being spat upon standing in a corner. And if you're thinking to yourself, oh, that couldn't have happened. He's just telling that because he wants people to feel sorry for him because he's black, blah, blah, whatever. I mean, I can imagine things that could go through people's health, but I want you to stop yourself for a second too and say, but what if it did happen? What if it did happen? Are you willing to consider that it could happen? Are you considering the fact that if it happened, why could it, did it, would it happen? And, it's worth considering. And it is something that we need to, a significant majority of us need to say, the country that will ask those questions, that will say, that will confront things that will not make you feel good. But they're not going to not make you feel good because you're white. Stop that narrative in your mind right now. They're going to make you not feel good because as a human being who is called to get along with all these things we've been talking about, being a peacemaker, as a Christian that's saying you believe that word of God, you do, you need to be able to recognize that this is the battle we're called to. And we have to be willing to think of it as a life or death battle. And, they can wipe us out. They can say, we don't like what you're saying, and we're going to burn your house down or shoot you from across an alleyway with a high-powered rifle, whatever. But the truth stands. The truth is marching on, right? So let's put the rubber to the road, folks. Those of you that hear this and are thinking about it, share it with other white people that and ask them to just think about it. Just listen, just think about it. It's not a threat. It's an invitation. I'm not threatening anyone's lifestyle. I'm absolutely not threatening anyone's lifestyle. I am inviting them to consider the parameters of their lifestyle and the narratives that they're listening to. I'm inviting you to consider that your bias maybe runs deeper than you even realize. Maybe. And why? If it does, why does it? So that's my soapbox. I'm done soapboxing for today, bro.
Yeah, man. Just and again, hopefully we can just continue just the knowledge over narratives piece. Just really just just trying to bring some understanding and just take a look at the person in the mirror and say, am I being open hearted? Am I judging people? Am I loving people? We have to get to that self-examination piece, and just really, if those of us that say we believe God, again, Jesus taught at a 3rd, 4th grade level. Are you actually believing? Are you trusting in his word? Are you doing what he say do? Because yes, when the Bible tells us to love our enemies, that's a tough thing to do, right? But the thing is, the Bible said do it. And this is how I've had to come to deal with it. Because again, we have the power of the Holy Spirit to help us in all things. So it's like, Lord, I'm going to obey your word, but you got to change the way I feel about it.
Right.
You got to change how I feel. I'm giving these emotions to you. I'm giving I'm putting pride down because yes, this thing has hurt my feelings or whatever the case may be, but I'm just going to completely give it to you. And that's where the peace comes in. And that's where you can really say, you know what, again, acknowledge where we are. This is a spiritual thing. There's a principality over this country right now, and he has a name. And All right.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
All
let's
right.
quote Abraham Lincoln too, shall we? Because there's hardly any. I don't know if there's anybody in America, regardless of where you're at, that would argue that Abraham Lincoln is not a good man. But he once said, and I'm probably paraphrasing this, but it is, "I do not like that man very much. I must get to know him better."
I preached from one of his speeches one time. Yeah.
You know, it's so
Yep.
compelling as a, what if that was our commitment? You know, I do not like that man very much, because there's plenty of people that are spewing off some pretty angry, pretty hateful, rhetoric, and it makes me not like them very much. But
Well, again,
hey,
DEI is evil. You will die with DEI. Things
right,
like that. For the unlearned person, a person will take that and run with it and hate equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I
yeah.
mean, and that's where we are. Knowledge over narratives. Let's get there.
Well, my name is Raul Bresh, and you fine young man, who are you again?
Antowan Hallman Sr.
And together we are Frame of Reference coming together. And I hope I'm coming together. So
Uh,
these are, I believe, very important things to be talking about. And it
yeah.
is a pleasure to have you, my brother, to talk with, and I can ask you
Yes.
stupid questions. And I hope I know you receive them in a, hey, I get out why you think that. I understand. It's just it is our deal, right? How are you
Yeah,
going to?
because again, when we both have the desire to have better understanding, that's where the growth comes in. Because see, this is where we are as a country. I like what the new Badger football coach said, and it's something that I've actually started to repeat a lot. He said, like when he was like saying how when he came in, of course, a lot of people transferred out and so on and so forth, and because they didn't care for the changes. And of course, one thing that he said, he said, change is inevitable, but growth is optional. and and so that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
Change is inevitable, but growth is optional. Are you going to grow spiritually? Are you going to grow intellectually? Are you going to grow in understanding? Yeah. All right.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks, folks, for listening to Frame of Reference coming together. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for taking the time to listen to us talk. And I hope we've stimulated some conversations among you and people you come into contact with, because that is our hope and prayer. So hopefully tune in next time. We're going to continue the discussion. Who knows what stupid things I might think of to want to talk about, or that Antoine will come up to challenge me with. But I trust that they will be as important and enlightening and what do we call that when you're cohesive? You're becoming more and more of a coalition building. We're a coalition building conversation.
There we go.
All right.
And the coalition is to edify.
Amen.
To build up.
Amen. So remember, growth is optional. See you next time, folks.